What you're about to hear is not mere chance, not random, not accidental. Something older than logic and quieter than your thinking mind has drawn you to this moment. And if you're part of the generation that has lived long enough to see patterns repeat, to watch families circle the same pain in different clothing, then you already know. Life doesn't just happen. It repeats until something becomes conscious. There are stories stitched into your inner world that did not begin with you, yet they are asking to be completed through you. Wounds you never personally lived through still press against your chest like a low, invisible pressure. Not memories, inheritances, ancestral grief woven into your breath. Patterns that return like rituals. Choices made on your behalf before you ever had the power to choose. And then one day you awaken with a subtle but undeniable ache. Not a wound exactly, more like a summons. A sacred discontent. The feeling that you weren't born merely to survive, but to transform something. Carl Jung called this the individuation process, the slow awakening of the self beyond the mask of the persona, the reclaiming of unconscious forces that have quietly dictated your path. Jung gave one of the most piercing warnings ever spoken. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. So when you feel that ache, when you realize you've been living inside scripts you never wrote, this is not weakness. This is the beginning of the pen entering your hand. You are standing at the edge of fate, and for the first time you can feel the ink. Now hear me carefully. There are burdens you were never meant to carry forever, yet you carry them because your psyche, your soul, if you prefer that word, said yes to something ancient. Not to reject your lineage, but to redeem it. Not to sever your roots, but to water them with awareness. You are not here to continue the story. You are here to end the chapter no one before you dared to end. And that doesn't mean you're better than those who came before. It means you are more conscious. The pain still exists. The confusion still lingers. But now there is also vision. Something like purpose buried under the weight. You did not come to suffer what others suffered. You came to liberate what they could not. So let's begin the journey. The 6 signs that your soul did not come to repeat, but to close the cycle. Sign 1. A sacred discomfort with what your family once called normal. This isn't rage. It isn't rebellion. It's quieter than that. Like a candle inside your chest that refuses to go out. You sit at the same table, hear the same stories, watch the same dynamics play out, and something in you tightens. You feel the weight of unspoken grief in the room. You sense the invisible contracts signed in silence. Endure, perform, don't speak of what hurts. And even if your mouth stays polite, your spirit begins to stir. You're not judging them, you're awakening. What they call love starts to feel conditional. What they call strength starts to look like survival. What they call sacrifice starts to feel like inherited exhaustion. And you begin to realize something that is both heartbreaking and liberating. Many families don't pass down only traditions and recipes and eye color. They pass down coping strategies. They pass down emotional silence. They pass down roles. Jung spoke of the family unconscious. An invisible web of ancestral memories and unresolved emotion that doesn't live only in thoughts. It lives in the body, in posture, in breath, in what you feel allowed to say and what you feel forced to hide. And the moment you feel that discomfort not as a passing mood but as a persistent knowing, you are already stepping outside the web. You begin to see what others have normalized. The emotional absences, the roles everyone plays without question. The guilt handed out like currency, the way peace often means nobody tells the truth. And here's the point of no return. Once you see it clearly, you cannot unsee it. You may try to fit in again. You may try to soften the truth for the sake of comfort. You may even try to convince yourself this is just how it is. But something inside you won't let you go back to sleep. Because every time you betray your own knowing to preserve the illusion, a part of you dims. Not dramatically, quietly, like a small withdrawal from your own soul. And Jung would say this is the psyche demanding integrity. This discomfort is not a flaw. It is the sacred fire of transformation. You feel it when a relative makes the same resigned comment they've made for 30 years. When a sibling repeats the same emotional dance that was inherited but never examined. When someone praises a pattern that secretly broke you and you cannot laugh along anymore. You can't pretend, you can't remain blind. You have outgrown the language of silence. And yes, it can make you feel estranged. Not because you are disloyal, but because you have become a threshold, someone standing between what was unconscious and what is becoming conscious. The one who sees what others cannot yet tolerate seeing. But listen, you are not here to correct them as people. You are here to correct the story. Not to carry the lineage like a burden, but to carry it consciously, with reverence and truth. This is what real loyalty looks like at the level of the psyche. Not repeating the wound, but refusing to pass it on. You are pruning the family tree, not to sever it, but to let light in. And that is not betrayal. That is healing. Jung said that those who look outside dream, but those who look inside awaken. And that is what is happening to you. You are awakening not only for yourself, but for those who came before you, and for those who will come after you. You are becoming the hinge between the wound and the wonder. You are the silent revolution, not to reject your roots, but to release their pain. You are the moment the cycle begins to loosen, and the soul finally begins to breathe again. The second sign that you came to close a cycle is this. You feel deeply moved by stories you never lived. Yet they live inside you. This isn't simple empathy. It's not just being emotional or sensitive, it's something heavier, older. A grief that reaches the marrow without explanation. A sadness that arrives uninvited, without context, but with undeniable weight. Someone mentions a loss that happened long before you were born, and suddenly your chest tightens, your throat closes, your eyes burn. You feel it as if it were your own. But it isn't your personal memory. It's ancestral. Carl Jung taught that the psyche is not sealed within the boundaries of a single lifetime. It stretches across generations, woven into what he called the collective and family unconscious. What you are feeling is not imagination. It is resonance. Your sensitivity is not weakness. It is receptivity. You are not broken. You are open. You are attuned to what others had to silence in order to survive. You didn't just inherit facial features, habits, or traditions. You inherited the uncried tears, the withheld forgiveness, the buried shame, the losses that were never properly mourned because there was no time, no safety, no language. And even though no one handed these things to you in words, your body remembers them. You feel it when certain rooms make your skin prickle, when an old photograph carries more weight than it should. When a lullaby or a fragment of history stirs something deep and unfinished in your chest. This is not nostalgia. This is unfinished business seeking consciousness. Jung spoke of the ancestral unconscious as a living system that seeks balance through awareness. Every family system unconsciously waits for someone who can feel without collapsing, who can remember without becoming consumed. Someone who can witness that someone is you. And yes, it can feel like too much. But that's not because you are fragile. It's because you are permeable enough for truth to pass through. Your dreams, your emotions, even your body have become the place where ancient pain is finally acknowledged. There is no applause for this work, no ceremony, often no recognition at all. But there is a quiet liberation that happens each time you allow the inherited ache to rise and pass through you without denial. When tears come, when silence comes, when words finally form where none existed before, you are not just releasing your own burden. You are cleansing the entire system. You are giving breath to what was suffocating in secrecy. You are not doing this to be a hero. You are doing it because something in you refuses to pass it on. And that refusal is sacred. You are not overreacting, you are remembering. And remembrance is how the wound begins to loosen its grip. You are not carrying this pain to suffer. You are carrying it to transmute it, turning the ghost into a message, the silence into a voice, the grief into a deeper, quieter love. That is how cycles begin to close, not with drama, with presence. The third sign that you have come to close a cycle is one you may have felt your entire life. You have always felt different, not superior, not defective, just out of step. A subtle dissonance has followed you like a quiet thread through the years. A sense that you see through things others accept without question. What they call normal often feels hollow to you. Since childhood, you've carried a gaze that looks beneath the surface, a heart that feels deeper, a mind that questions what others inherit without resistance. Jung wrote that the individual who seeks wholeness often feels estranged from the collective. Individuation is not isolation, it is liberation. And this difference you've carried was never a flaw. It was a compass. You didn't come to rebel for rebellion's sake. You came to illuminate a path that had not yet been walked consciously, to stay awake in systems that reward sleep. You likely tried to dim this difference. You wore the masks. You said the expected things. You played the roles. But inside, something burned quietly, persistently, asking you to remember who you were before you learned how to belong by disappearing. And each time you betrayed that inner truth to be accepted, you felt it. The subtle loss of something honest inside you. Now you understand. Belonging at the cost of your soul is not belonging. It is self-abandonment. And you are done abandoning yourself. Your not fitting in is not evidence that you are lost. It is evidence that you are awake. Your presence carries a different frequency, and that alone can unsettle those who have built their lives around suppression. You don't provoke intentionally, but you mirror what others have worked hard not to see. You no longer shrink for comfort, not out of arrogance, but out of coherence. You are not asking anyone to follow you. You are simply refusing to betray your own path anymore. And Jung would say that this alone is revolutionary, because healing begins the moment you stop living out the inherited script and start living your own destiny. Every time you choose depth over performance, honesty over tradition, integrity over approval, the cycle weakens. Even if no one applauds, even if you walk parts of this road alone. The fourth sign that you have come to close a cycle is the quiet, reverent realization that your life is not isolated. Your choices ripple. They move backward into your ancestry and forward into generations not yet born. You begin to understand that healing is not just personal self-care. It is a sacred disruption. When done consciously, it alters the entire field. At first, you may think your boundary, your truth, your departure is just about you. But then you feel it, the subtle unraveling, as if every aligned choice loosens a knot buried deep in the family tree. As if every honest no releases 1,000 silent yeses spoken by those who never had the freedom to refuse. Your actions become ceremonial, not loud, not dramatic, intentional. You no longer act from rebellion, you act from restoration. You don't burn the roots, you create space for new growth. You are not punishing the past, you are redeeming it. Jung said that one of the most powerful ways to heal the past is to live authentically in the present. And that is what you are doing now. Quietly, steadily, without needing permission. And even if no one names it, your soul knows. You did not come here only to repeat. You came to remember. To choose, to say with calm clarity, "This ends with me." The fifth sign that you have come to close a cycle appears as a quiet but undeniable urge to cleanse, not just your surroundings, but your inner world. This impulse does not begin with your hands. It begins in the psyche. It is not simply the desire to tidy a room or discard old objects. It is the deeper need to free your life of what no longer carries truth. A subtle inner voice begins to ask you to look not only at what surrounds you, but at what has silently accumulated inside you for decades. Carl Jung taught that what we refuse to bring into consciousness does not disappear. It lives on as fate, as repetition, as quiet dissatisfaction. And now you begin to feel the weight of what has been unspoken, unexamined, and carried out of habit rather than choice. There comes a moment when you can no longer tolerate what once felt normal. Certain conversations feel heavy. Certain relationships feel strangely hollow. Not because they have changed, but because you have. Your energy has shifted. And with that shift comes discernment. You begin to question loyalties that were inherited, not chosen. Obligations wrapped in guilt. Roles you were praised for playing but never asked if you wanted. You ask yourself often quietly, is this truly mine? Does this belief, this bond, this burden still belong to who I am becoming? And often the answer is no, so you begin to let go. Sometimes it looks simple. Clearing a drawer, donating clothes, releasing objects you once clung to. Other times it is invisible, stepping away from conversations that revolve around denial, choosing silence instead of explanation, saying no without apology, resting without guilt. Each act of release becomes a ritual, not an act of rejection but of self-respect. You stop negotiating your peace for inclusion. You stop shrinking to be digestible. You stop carrying what was never meant to be yours forever. Jung said that individuation requires us to integrate what has lived in the shadow. And cleansing is not abandonment. It is integration. It is standing before everything you have carried and saying, I see you, I honor you, but I will not drag you forward into the future. This process is not always graceful. Sometimes it stings. Sometimes it leaves empty spaces that ache with unfamiliar quiet. But those spaces are sacred. They are not absence. They are preparation. They are the pause where your soul finally has room to breathe. Here lies the paradox. You are not shedding your past to escape it. You are shedding what is false to remember your essence. The more you release, the more clearly you hear your inner voice. The less you carry, the more freely you move. The clearer your space, the louder your truth becomes. This is not abandonment, it is reverence. Reverence for your soul. Reverence for those who came before and could not choose differently. Reverence for those who will come after and will not have to carry what ends with you. This is not self-help, it is soul work. And then comes the sixth and final sign, the one that requires the deepest courage. You did not close your heart. After everything you endured, after disappointments, betrayals, absences, and unspoken grief, you remained open, not naive, not unguarded, open consciously. Carl Jung taught that true transformation does not begin when we harden in response to pain, but when we refuse to be shaped by it unconsciously. You understood something profound. Numbness may protect, but it also paralyzes, so you chose to feel. You let yourself grieve without bitterness. You let yourself love again without armor. You stayed soft where others became rigid. This was not weakness. It was mastery. To remain open after pain is one of the most radical acts a human being can make. It breaks a lineage of emotional exile. It ends a pattern where love was punished, tenderness was unsafe, and feeling had consequences. You did not heal by force. You healed by refusing to abandon your essence. You chose honesty over manipulation, departure without hatred, boundaries without cruelty, grief without vengeance. And each time you did, even when no one noticed, you shifted the entire system. Your sensitivity is no longer a liability, it is a compass. You are no longer vulnerable because you need to be held. You are vulnerable because you have become the one who can hold. And what you hold is not only your own story. You hold the sorrow that was never spoken, the tenderness that was never safe, the love that was never allowed to breathe. And now, you open your heart not to earn belonging, but because openness is who you are. This is how cycles end, not with dramatic gestures, not with confrontation, but with quiet courage, with presence, with consciousness. Jung taught that the soul awakens not through rebellion for its own sake, but through authenticity. The soul does not shout, it whispers. through discomfort, through dissonance, through the realization that something ancient must end so something living can begin. And perhaps that is why you found this message, not by chance but by resonance, because somewhere inside you, long before you had language for it, your soul made a vow. This ends with me, not as rejection but as liberation, not as betrayal but as love. You did not come to destroy your lineage. You came to heal it with awareness, to tend the wound until it no longer bleeds into the next generation. And even if no one around you understands, something in the unseen shifts because of you. Every time you choose presence over programming, consciousness over habit, truth over silence, the cycle loosens. This is how fate is rewritten, quietly, gently, permanently. You are not the continuation of the wound. You are the turning point, and the healing begins here.